Before we dive into the main event, I want to shed some light on the significance of J. Robert Young Executive in Residence Program. This initiative serves as the bridge between our students and seasoned executives, offering them unique opportunities to inform, educate, and inspire them. These executive in residence experts share their journeys and their secrets. Curt Coffman has been with us since Monday already and engaged in guest lecturing, meeting students, and many other transformational experiences. And moreover, these interactions also serve as a catalyst for innovation within our faculty leadership and staff members to enhance and elevate curriculum and strategic direction of the Barton School of Business. All of the networking opportunities arise from these engagements, foster growth, collaboration, bringing together alumni members of the business community and students for meaningful conversations. In essence, it's a multidimensional impact where everyone involved emerges as a better version of themselves. So before I bring onto stage the person who you've been all waiting to hear from, I also would like to give a warm welcome to all members of the Dean's Advisory Board, Alumni Advisory Board, Institute for the Study of Economic Growth Advisory Board, and if you could just wave your hands and please join me in the round of applause for all of our members in the audience. Thank you. Last but not least, I'd like to introduce a special guest, and that would be Tammy Coffman, my apologies. Tammy Coffman, she's the spouse of Curt Coffman, sitting to the right. Welcome, Tammy. So now it is with great pleasure that I introduce our distinguished guest today. He is a renowned New York Times best-selling author, accomplished researcher, seasoned consultant. Over the course of his illustrious 35-year career, Mr. Coffman has dedicated his expertise to the fascinating field of high-performing cultures. He revolutionized the world of employee and management development with his groundbreaking book, The First Break All the Rules, What the World's Greatest Managers Do Differently. For an impressive 22 years, he has served as global practice leader for employee and customer engagement at the Gallup organization. And over the past decade, as the head of the Coffman organization, he has conducted survey involving more than 700,000 leaders, managers, and employees, providing invaluable insights to esteemed clients such as Ritz-Carlton, Red Bull, Charles Schwab, Waldorf Astoria, and many other companies and organizations globally. His latest publication, Culture Eats Strategy for Lunch, Secret of Extraordinary Results, is a testament to his commitment to enhancing organizational performance, fostering excellence, and in leadership. His profound research has graced the pages of esteemed publications, including Harvard Business Review, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Business Week, and many, many others. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Curt Coffman as our executive in residence for a keynote presentation titled, The Power of You, the New Formula for Growth.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for introducing my wife, Tammy. And I'm going to start with a story about Tammy and I. A few years ago, Tammy and I and our daughter were at a gymnastics meet in Norfolk, Nebraska. And we actually went to a Wendy's restaurant to get lunch. And we were driving through the Wendy's drive-thru, and the girl that took order was very nice, very kind, got it right. And I pulled around to the window, and she has this great big blue button on. Remember this? It says, "I'm empowered." I'm empowered. That's great. But I offer her a $50 bill, and she says, "I can't break a $50 bill. I've got to get my supervisor." I said, "No, I want you to break the $50 bill. You're empowered." She goes, I can't. My wife and daughter in the back seat are going, "Don't do this, Dad. This does not have to be a learning moment. But anyway, her supervisor came to the window, and I explained to her, she got this great, hey, Margaret, how are you? Got this great big blue button on that says, I'm empowered. And the supervisor said, look, sir, this is just one of those stupid corporate imposed programs that we have to do, and we don't know why we're doing it. Let's start with that in terms of how we actually unleash the potential within our organizations. Because no people, no culture, no people, no success. And I've been able to devote my 40 years, good Lord, to the whole study of what's right with people. I started with being a psychologist and a therapist, and I quickly learned that people don't like to be told what's wrong with them. Can you have a couple hours after this, and we're going to focus on what's wrong with you? You really would be attracted to that. And I discovered that we had a very robust language about what's wrong: bipolar disorder, schizoid personality disorder, schizophrenia. But we've had virtually no vocabulary about what's right with people. At that time, I was able to team up with Don Clifton with the Gallup organization, who became a significant mentor of mine, and several other people, Seligman at Penn, Kahneman at Princeton, who were all psychologists that arrived at the same thing I did. We don't like focusing on what's wrong. We want to focus on what's right. So I began my career in the whole area of positive strengths-based psychology. And the thing that I've been able to do, luckily, is I've been able to focus on success. And I devoted my entire 35-year career to studying success within organizations, within people. Now, a lot of times we study average. And when we study average, we emerge with average, the best of the worst and the worst of the best. And let me give you an example of this. I was at a brand new learning center in Connecticut for one of the largest car manufacturers in the world. And they had this learning center, and I was back in the green room. And I decided to go to the restroom, and I went to the restroom, and I walked in, and it's beautiful. I'm usually not awestruck by bathrooms, but this was beautiful. Walnut wainscoting, crown molding, unbelievable. And so I washed my hands, went out to leave, and this was on the back of the door. Did you remember to flush? Now, I'm going out to speak to all these leaders. Guess where I started? How did you do the research? Don't think about that very long. But did you actually find that 68.5% of all people using this restroom are not flushing? And you know the answer to that. Only maybe 1, 2, 3 out of 100, maybe even 1,000 don't. But we felt compelled to put these signs in every bathroom because of those 3, 5 people out of 100 or 1,000. Many times we have geared in terms of business around, let's focus on the bad practice and set policy based upon the bad practice. And I think we're in a new age in terms of we got to focus on what's right. Basically, every organization I've ever worked with is exactly the same. They have the same values. They have the same mission statements. So 80% is generic. But it's the 20% that actually slam dunk the promise to the customer and the employee. And my role is to go in and help identify that 20%, not only in companies, but in you. How can I help you know more about who you are versus who you're not? Out of that, I basically discovered a very startling thing, which was that you have 3 employees walking your halls every day. You have an engaged employee, and basically, of the world, not the United States, this is our global study, 49% of people are engaged, actively engaged at their work. They're showing up, they have the right talent, they have the right relationship, they have the right growth, challenge. And they're at the front of this boat paddling forward. But then you have a group in the middle which is not engaged, or what I call passengers, which are basically in a holding pattern. They're not necessarily negative, they're not necessarily positive, but I use the word road warriors, retired on active duty. The people who show up every day, but they've left their heart and their minds and their talent in the car. That makes up around a quarter. But then you have a group of people at the back of this boat which are actively disengaged. And the thing about the actively disengaged people is they're not passive. They're actually using their energy to row against the people in the front that are taking it forward. You ever worked with an actively disengaged employee? I call them cave dwellers, consistently against virtually everything. But they're not bad people. And here's the reality. I had the CEO of Mutual of Omaha ask me one time, wouldn't it be great if we had a lab test or a cotton swab? And when people came to work every day, we could spit on this swab and put it in a machine and go, engaged. Ridiculous, right? Actually, there's a more accurate test. Ask them. Ask them. Because all of us in this room have been in all three of these positions. And when we were back there, we didn't like being back there. But I don't care about those people who are back there. I care about the people who are at the front of the boat. Because basically, we know that when we study that group of people, we've been able to identify a formula in terms of growth. And this formula is both at an individual level and an organization level. We've all talked about development and growth, but we've never had kind of a formula to look at what are those dimensions that I as an individual have to focus on in terms of my success. With the pandemic, we've actually forced the accountability in a very different direction. People are now focusing on, I want to bring a full day of work. I want to be a productive person. Versus in the past, it was the supervisor. And frankly, we hired supervisors back in the 40s, 50s, to keep people in line. Because at that point, employees were nothing more than a pair of hands. It's what you did, you showed up with those pair of hands, and we assumed people hate work. When people are at work, they'd rather be anywhere but, and when they're there, they're going to do everything they can to not work. 80% of the population was industrial jobs. Today, that number is 8%. So where is the human capital? Is it still in the hands? Where is it? Right here. The head, the heart, the intelligence, the ideas, the instincts that people have. So that demands a new model for leadership, for managers, for employees. And I'd like to just take you through a little bit of what I've learned with that study of these people. What is the driver of high performance? What is it? You have that one person that consistently, year in and year out, outperform the average 2 to 3 times. Whenever you look at realty and you look at the salespeople of the year, look at the number one person. Not only are they number one, they're number one by double of the second person. Why? What causes that? Is it skills, which is what they know how to do? Is it knowledge, which they picked up along the way? Or is it this thing called talent? And the first thing I've discovered, it's a talent that is the multiplier in terms of growth. And talent, how do we define that? Well, if we had Peyton Manning, I'm sure you haven't heard of him down here. He was a Denver guy, actually. No, he's an Indian. You don't have to say Indianapolis over here. But if we could take Peyton Manning and Brady, and it was about skills and knowledge, why wouldn't we just have them teach every quarterback how to do it? Because it's a talent. Now, talent is a broad stroke, and we have to think about it in what we've understood. 90% of what we've learned about the human brain, we've learned in the last 10 years. Just think where we're going to be in another 10 years. But we now have a neurological explanation of talent. Basically, from 0 to 3 years of age, our brain is developing at a more rapid level than it will ever again in our lifetime. It is just literally reaching out, developing synaptic connections, a neural structure. But from 3 to 15, because that growth can't continue at that rate, we actually go through a process called pruning. And pruning, Dr. Shugani at Wayne State Medical Center calls pruning, the roads with the most traffic get widened, the ones that are rarely used fall into disrepair. And the controversial thing is that by the time we're 15 to 22 years of age, our brain is pretty well formed. Our wiring is pretty well formed. And the most controversial, people don't change that much. But we can take a different focus of that and saying, instead of trying to put in what was left out, let's try to draw out what was left in. Isn't that a refreshing view in terms of how we think about people? So the brain's formed, and I think about that brain in terms of a filter. Basically, we take an input, we filter it, and we have a response. So for instance, I'll use my wife as an example since she's here. We go to a lot of things called galas. Did you hear the sarcasm dripping from my voice? We go to a lot of these things called galas. Here's what a gala is. You have to go, it's a fundraiser, you have to go, there's 400 people in a ballroom, and you have to find a way to get along with everybody. So my wife goes up to people and she introduces herself and she learns their names and what they do and their spouses and their kids and all that crap. The same stimulus hits me. My response is I go stand in the corner and talk to 1 or 2 or 3 people I already know and get to know them better. Now, why the difference in response? And it's that filter. It's about our brain. It's about our wiring. People cannot give people talent, but what we can do is help to provide a measurement to people about their talent. We use a tool called Talent Set, which really provides people with the top 6 talents that are really your keys to success. And the thing that's nice about talent is that we are not nice, actually very challenging, is that we can't see our own talent. We are completely blind to what our talents are. Think about it. You take a great basketball player. Can that basketball player tell you exactly how he or she plays? It just happens. But the opportunity there is that we are 100% dependent upon somebody else helping us see those talents. I'm going to use the empowerment thing again. Can I empower you? Okay. You might want to just kind of put your pen down. And, yeah. On the count of 3, 1, 2, 3, you're empowered. Did anything happen there? No? But one very important thing happened there. And I define for all of you who the empowerer is and who the empoweree is. Let's drop the word empowerment and use discovery. Because the way in which we can take our work to a whole new level is to become a discoverer of their people. Other people can see what our talents are, and they can also see what our non-talents are. People don't call on me for my non-talents. I can't fix anything. You know that spring in your garage door? Don't ever touch that. And I've done it twice. My ego says, oh, you ought to be able to put that rocking chair together. At IKEA, there is a sign on the door that has the name Curt Coffman with a big round circle and a slash through it. Because he always brings everything back broken. Anyway, the beauty of that is my people around me don't call on me to help fix things. What people don't call on you for is your non-talents. What people call on you for are your talents. So let's start discovering other people and start with your own development by identifying and knowing more about who you are versus who you're not. And we now have a measurement which we can do that. Then we have to have focus of that talent. There's nothing very special about talent because we all have a brain and we all have talent. What is special about talent is when talent becomes talent-dead. When talent becomes talent-dead. And that's where having the right focus for people around their talents is so powerful. If we continue to take the approach that anybody can be anything they want to be if they try hard enough, we're only setting people up for failure. But if we bring the right focus to what people are and who they are, what those talents are, and put those to work, we can establish that focus. Now, we've known this. With every employee, they have to have a clear expectation of what they do. The problem is we've had these things called best practices. Could you hear the sarcasm dripping on that one too? But basically, best practices is we go into another organization and we study what they do, and then we go back to our organization and make everybody do it that way. Focus is not about the steps people need to follow. Focus is about the outcomes that we hired the person to achieve. It's not about coming in, do these steps. And you know, the performance evaluation is a good example. How many people have been through a performance evaluation? How many people loved the experience? No. You did. Usually here's what the majority experience with the performance evaluation. The first 5 minutes is here's what I love about you, and the remaining 55 minutes is identifying your areas of opportunity. Now, I'm glad that discussion took place with the man. Anytime that dialogue is there is good. But the tragedy is I walk away from that discussion knowing more about who I am not than who I am. And I got a hunch that people don't hire people because they're who they're not. We hire people because of who they are. Then why do we feel the need to take them down a road that basically says, I'm going to help you know clearly who you're not? Overcoming weakness will change performance, but to an average level. A person who doesn't have that natural talent as a pianist can practice diligently and get average. But here's a tragedy, is that when people actually are coached to overcome the weakness, they will get better. But over time, when you study that performance, it actually falls below where it was before the original. So would that say that kind of the approach we're taking isn't actually not helping people? It's actually diminishing people. So we have to have a focus about the right outcomes. Tell me if I do my job perfectly, what are you going to see? Margaret, you ever have somebody come in and they're doing the steps, but they're not achieving the outcome? That's very difficult, isn't it? So what is the outcome? Well, if you're at a hotel, that front desk is to make you feel welcome as quickly as possible. Ritz-Carlton is great about this. They actually play a game, who can know the client's name before they ever arrive in the driveway. They encourage people to have innovation. So if I find your room, when I turn down the room, you have an empty Mountain Dew can in the trash can, I put a chilled Mountain Dew on your bedside. Because when you define the desired outcome, you allow people to find their own path of least resistance to get to that outcome. And when that happens, that's the utilization of talent. So even as an individual, what are the outcomes that I want to achieve? Not necessarily the goals, but what are the outcomes I actually want to achieve with my life? And then beginning to use that talent to get there. Legislate the outcomes, not the steps. when we focus on growth, this has long been something that has been very difficult. How do we help people grow and develop and progress? And we've tended to take a very kind of remedial way of doing that. But I'm here to say, in today's economy, we don't have a career ladder anymore. And the reason we don't have a career ladder anymore is it created a shortage of prestige and respect for the people at the bottom of the ladder. It basically told people, if you're in that job, do everything you can as quickly as possible to get out of that job. And we managed those roles from that perspective. But the bottom line is, the ladder meant more money, more reverence, more prestige. But the ladder's dead. Why? Because people stopped climbing it. We actually quit in terms of our progress. Our managers quit. And the thing is, if you think about it, you can take a very motivated employee or person and you can say, I'm going to make you great. I'm going to help you. And I've noticed you don't walk very well. So I'm going to teach you how to walk. Okay? I'm motivated. I want to do this. And I take a step, and I learn that new way to walk. But what happens when I stop thinking about it? I go right back to the old way of walking. And then we can label people as resistant to change, negative, when in fact, that's about the wiring. You ever had somebody try to rewire your brain? Wait, anybody married? It's very difficult to do. So you're not going to make it more than just the average. Today we have the career tree of development, which is very different because we have this lattice, if you will, in terms of getting better at the things we are good at right now. Because if you ever notice the bridge of promotion, which is good, I'm not against promotion, but people go across that bridge of promotion and then we burn the bridge. They can never go back. So we've taken somebody who is our number one salesperson, made them a manager. What happens when it's not successful? Anybody ever had a bad manager? Anybody ever had a good one? Anybody sitting next to the bad one right now? No. The career growth is how we need to see our career. How am I expanding? And you're seeing this in companies becoming practice specialists, becoming practice leaders, helping to go to the next level, and they don't have to leave the job that they were so good at to do this. And this, you're seeing this already with the trial periods, with job shadowing, because a lot of times we don't give people a clue about the demands of that next role. You know, we've come out of this last 3 years throwing money at employees and saying, I'm going to offer you $30,000, $40,000 a year. I've even seen $2 an hour. And the thing that's most attractive about that to an employee is it's a comment about their value. Just by mere being offered something is a value. That makes me feel good. And so a lot of people jump ship. And within 3 months, a lot of those people were fired. Because the expectation of $30,000 more a year also had a demand for performance of $30,000 to $40,000 a year. No one ever told them that. I assumed I get $30,000, $40,000 a year doing what I'm doing in my current role. And when you're paid $30,000 to $40,000 ahead of the average, is there expectations of performance for you? Yeah. And companies are matching that with the speed with which I let people go. So the growth has to be tempered. You have to be accountable to your growth. My new book, The Power of You, is about just that. It's about the formula. It's about how you can begin to have kind of a structure. You don't have to use these words, but think about it. The talent, which is who you are, the natural recurring pattern of thought, feeling, and behavior that can be productively applied, is only good when there's a focus around the outcomes that you want, and specifically the growth that you want to achieve across your career. It's no longer about, I can tell you I still have managers that I coach all the time that say, I just don't have enough VP positions. I just don't have enough senior VP positions. Is that what people are after today? The senior VP? I don't think so. What we're finding is people just want that progression, that value about who they are, and not be set up for failure by taking them out of what their talents are. But with the focus, with the growth around the right talent, making it talented, you also have to have the relationship. And the relationship is very important because it starts with being able to find the discoverers of you. Do you know who your discoverers are? Do you know? Have you had discoverers in your life? Yeah. How much did they impact you? A lot. And will you be friends with that person forever?
Probably.
You ever had a manager that was a discoverer? Yeah. Thank you. That is progress. Because that's a manager's role. A manager's role is to not keep people working hard with their hands. A manager's role is to basically help discover the person and set them up for the highest level of productivity possible. And it breaks a lot of rules, like my first book, because it basically says great managers get very close to their people. The old adage that familiarity breeds contempt, how ridiculous is that? That actually means that the more I get to know you, the more contemptible you become. And some managers will tell me, well, I can't fire him if I'm too close to him. Actually, it's easier. Come in, I love you. You're fired, I still love you. Come in, this job is eating you alive. And I care too much about you to let this continue, to see you go through this failure after failure after failure. But it doesn't mean you don't have talent. When you're dealing with a person who's struggling with performance, you only have three options. One is to fire, rehire, or rewire. Fire, rehire, rewire. And the rewiring part of it is sometimes bringing the right skills and knowledge to the talent, the right tools to the talent to be successful. I tend to find that works about 13% of the time. But organizations have the biggest opportunity available to them, which is I can rehire you into a role that actually fits who you are. I have very good friends that became principals of schools that were teachers. And the thing that amazed me is that those administrators still taught. They still taught. That's the talent, because you cannot not use your talents. They happen. And it's very difficult to ever get somebody to not do something that they really want to do. And the manager and the people we work with can help us recognize and celebrate those immediate kinds of feedback. You know, what you did with that customer blew me away. It was amazing. Do you want to do more of it? What gets recognized gets done. And a part of that relationship is about recognition, is about reward. The thing that's important to know is that, well, let me ask this. Anybody here suffering from over-recognition? Nobody raised their hand. I can't wait till somebody raises their hand. I want to talk to them. What are they going to say to me? Oh, stop. I can't take any more positive feedback about my behavior. But we've all felt unrecognized, haven't we? We did a study in Tokyo, fascinating study with customer satisfaction. And we were able to use people and run them through a functional MRI machine. And we would talk about brands that they were loyal to versus brands they weren't loyal to. Recognition that they have received, recognition that fell flat. When they thought about that recognition, it lit up the same parts of the brain that love shows up as. That love. But here's what big discovery was. When we were using the control professor that was giving the recognition, we actually found that professor, when he gave the recognition, the same parts of his brain lit up. If you're not getting recognition, give it. Because it's going to be the same impact as when you get it. And you're also going to turn somebody's life around for that day more beyond what you will ever know. You ever had a horrible day? It's just, oh man, everything I've done, it just seems like crisis after crisis after crisis. But then on the way out, somebody just mentioned something. You've really stirred the people up in a positive way today, Stephanie. What happens? We're back. We're back. There's nothing very complicated about recognition other than sometimes it's about the future, which is the employee of the year. We get it at the end of the year. We don't know exactly why we got it. We give weird awards, like a bronzed eagle or something. It tends to be uncertain. We don't know exactly what we did to get that. And it tends to be insincere. You ever gotten insincere recognition? It's kind of like the empowerment thing. I give you this recognition to let you know who I am and who you are. But let's drop the victimization that we're waiting for somebody else to do it. With this formula, you can begin to kind of set forth kind of a plan. It's not very complicated. To where you're discovering your talents, knowing the outcomes you want to achieve. Not goals, because goals tend to be about what other people are being successful at. And you're going to fall short. Having the right growth, which is around this new career about getting better and having greater fit between who you are and what you do. And then the right relationship. Find a discoverer and stick with them for life. Because you're not only changing your life, you're changing theirs too. It's so prevalent about who gets the benefit, the mentor or the mentee. And it tends to be the mentor. And you know why? It goes back to that brain study. The same parts of their brain light up. Just the formula for you to consider, but we have to have something in terms of how we view the development of employees, of people, of each other. And I believe it's the talent times the focus, the growth, and having the right relationships. Anybody here have a board of directors? Larissa does. A board of directors for your personal life. Doesn't have to be a full board, 2 or 3 people. But that board of directors gets together and they focus on you. And they focus on your success and where you can go this next year. It works. But you have to be intentional about the unintentional. End with the story and then we'll take some questions. A woman by the name of Valerie Cox wrote a poem called The Cookie Thief. And it was actually an incident where she was in the Seattle airport and she went into the bookstore and bought a magazine and a pack of cookies. And she was setting out, waiting for her flight, and she notices that the guy on the other side of her reaches over and takes one of her cookies. Can't believe this. He must be a salesperson. Anyway. She eats a cookie, he eats a cookie. She can't even believe this is happening. Well, just about that time, her flight gets called. She gets on the plane, relief, puts the stuff underneath the seat in front of her, reaches into her bag and discovers her cookies are still in the bag. He actually wasn't trying to steal. He was trying to share. And there's so much meaning in a phrase that comes from the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, which is when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Questions, comments, disagreements, agreements. Remember, my ego is very fragile.
Becoming like the person that you are and like going through the path that you did, like what's one decision that you wish you didn't make?
Good question. Probably leaving the Gallup organization. I mean, I was in a prime position of being able to do what I love to do, had published 2 books, had a 3rd one on the way, had the people around me that I knew everybody's name. And because of a slight 10 minutes of anger, I made the decision to leave. And I've regretted that. Now, I've also realized that there were other things I needed to do. But that's one decision. And sometimes the ego comes in and says, how dare you treat me like that? The ego comes in and says, I should be CEO. And that happened, and I got upset, and I left. You know, your point is good because some of the most life-changing moments are 15 minutes. But how could have I avoided that? I could have had somebody around me that would tell me to pull my head out. Look at this, Curt. Look at all this stuff you have available to you. And you're wanting to quit? If I'd had the relationship, that wouldn't have happened. Right? That answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Else, yeah. Mm-hmm. Walmart. Mm-hmm.
Target, actually. And
Target?
So I was hired to do a job, and for the first couple months, I was able to get like recognition from the top of the store directors and things, but their predecessors and things and the people above me were like micromanaging, and then so I was getting my job done the way the head of the store would like it, and then now they're trying to apply more rules for like technically safety reasons, but it's hindering my job performance. And then so I've had some run-ins with them telling them that it's like I might be outside safer in the parking lot, but I'm like longer exposed to dangers with cars and blocking people in and things like that. And so I've had like some performance reviews where like, yeah, you tend to knock down what are rules, and they understand where I'm coming from, but because it comes from a corporation, they try to tell me there's no wiggle room. How do I go about that?
Why do we make rules? We make rules to keep people from doing things. If you're in a call center, you're allowed no more than 8 minutes to resolve the issue. So you know what the employee does? At 8 minutes, they dump them. They hang up on them. That's a rule that actually turns into a backfire. And you're right, there are some rules we need, safety, compliance, those kind of things. But we take that to an extreme of trying to prevent you from doing probably what your talent's doing. Now, yes, it does need to be managed, but it also, I make a rule for lots of people. We never make a rule for a person. And when we make a rule for a person, it's not a rule, it's a boundary. It's as if you don't come into my office and yell at me. You don't come into my office and tell me what you're mad about at the top of your lungs. Don't ever do that again. That's a boundary. Now, the rules that apply are those signs that went up across the bathroom. Did you remember to flush? I mean, how did you interpret that, ma'am? In the pink, yeah. What if you would have read that? Huh? Yeah. Our signs in organizations are ridiculous. Do not leave this door jarred open. We still kind of manage as if we're managing kids, when in fact it's an adult-to-adult thing. And we talk to the people that ajar the door versus the people, the majority who don't. And that's what's so surprising. I was able to do some research for a organization, a retail organization. And we actually found that expense reports were being cheated on. So they revised their expense report for everybody. And then I asked how many people were actually cheating on their expense report. Maybe about 3%. Well, what did that 3% do when you talked to them? Oh, we didn't talk to them. It's easy to make a rule for all other 89 people to not cheat on their expense report. And so rules are important, but boundaries are replacing rules. There are certain standards of behavior. And the old kind of boomer, and this is one of the tragedies, is the boomers and the millennials. I know many of you are Zs, and I really like both what I see there. But anyway, the millennials and the boomers battled like this in the workplace. You know why? Because the boomers needed the millennials more than the millennials needed the boomers. And boomers do not like that. I don't know why we feel so compelled to treat the people who help us the most badly, who need us the most. But the boomers are dying, so you got that going for you. Hey, I'm a boomer. But rules, let's start doing boundaries. You know, and that's not hard, but it does take a dialogue. It's not like, oh, we didn't talk to that 3%. We have to start having that dialogue. My favorite, when a manager is concerned about a relationship struggle they're having at work, I always say, what did they say when you talked to them about it? Because adult to adult is part on you too. And that is, we have to kindly confront things. And there are times we have to be very clear, very direct, when somebody is acting outside those lines. But let's do it. Not make a rule for everybody. Do you still work there? Yes. Do you remember the test you did when you applied? Yeah. It was identifying your talents. And that test, the results go back to the employer. but did they ever tell you what your talents were? What an opportunity. What an opportunity. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Hi, I'm so sorry. I have a question. So first of all, thank you for speaking. We really appreciate it. We really appreciate when people come out. But also, is there any way that you could be on your own board of self-directors? Like, is there any way I could self-recognize myself and get the same neurological response?
Absolutely. Absolutely, but here's the big thing. Know what kind of recognition you want. Do you want public? Do you want private? Do you want written? Do you want verbal? And here's the big one. Who do you want recognition from? And do they know it? So yes, I'm a part of that, but I also have to own my needs and let other people know what I need. You know, I always like to ask people, what's the best recognition you've ever received? That's a better question than how do you want recognition? Because people will always say, oh, written, private, just slip it under my door. And then I ask, what's the best recognition you've ever received? And they say, when they filled the Pepsi Center with 30,000 people and I ran out in the spot. But you can also help other people what kind of recognition they want. But yes, you have to be on your own board of directors. But you have to use those other people as keeping you focused on who you are versus who you're not. And that's the one rule. Okay? Thanks. Yeah. What? Yeah. We'll need a mic if people can't hear.
We have time for one more question.
So when a person you're working with or managing is in a position that they're not performing their best at, what are some ways to maybe help see their talents, even though they're not currently showing them because they're in a position they're not suited to work in?
Next question. It's about the talent. It's about paying attention and doing an inventory on the person about where they are succeeding. And beginning to say, when they don't just proofread an article, they make it better in terms of the story. I mean, you've got to kind of spot those hot spots, if you will. What really pings people? What really brings them the energy? And just having a dialogue around that and then asking them, I've noticed. Okay, I'm done. Did anybody? I may not. I may have been the only person who heard that. I have hallucinations once in a while, but I am in therapy for that. Was that a dog? Did anybody hear that? Oh my gosh! I just heard a dog bark. Sorry. Huh? I think someone coughed. Oh, coughed. Sorry. But you hold up a mirror to the person. Say, who are you? You want to be CEO or senior manager. What would you be doing on a Thursday afternoon? Do you have to manage a budget? Oh, I can't stand to manage a budget. Would you have to manage the politics within a group? Oh, I can't stand the politics. And then beginning to dive into who they really are. Yeah?
Thank you.
Thank you. Great.
Please join me in a round of applause. Thank our keynote speaker, Curt Coffman. And before we meet all of you outside for conversations, lots of pictures, book signing, Curt talked a little bit about awards and recognitions and kind of trophies. Well, I would like, on behalf of the Barton School of Business, to present you with this special trophy, and it has a meaning. The Barton School of Business is on its blooming journey to become one of the top business schools that focuses on graduating and preparing for meaningful personal and professional lives many, many students who are here with us today and who will be joining us for many, many years to come, all of our faculty and staff. We are on the blooming journey for students, for faculty, staff, for alumni, for our community members. And we, on behalf of the Barton School, want to thank you for your contributions to making Barton School bloom. And blooming is a perpetual cycle, so we will never stop blooming. And personally, I want to thank you for helping me to discover myself and helping many people in the audience to begin the discovery process. We are so, so grateful to you and so honored to have you as an executive in residence this semester, and we hope this is a lifetime engagement and with many memories. So as I present this to Curt Coffman, please join me one more time in the round of applause.
Thank you.
So we will be meeting you outside for refreshments, for conversations, and so grateful to so many of you, each and every one of you, for joining us today. Have a wonderful day, and go Shockers.